My name is Rachel Moore, and I am 27 years old. My mother passed away on a Sunday morning in April. By Tuesday afternoon, my sister had moved her things into the house. Not some of her things, all of her things, her clothes in the closet, her husband's shoes by the back door, her children's drawings taped to the refrigerator where my mother's calendar used to hang. I was at the funeral home on Tuesday afternoon. I was choosing a casket. I was answering questions about flower arrangements and readings and whether we wanted a reception afterward. I was doing the work that nobody wants to do but somebody has to, and I was doing it alone because my sister said she was too devastated to help. She was not too devastated to call a moving company. I found out when I drove to the house that evening to pick up a photograph for the service. I had a key. The key still worked. She hadn't changed the locks yet, which I later understood was an oversight she intended to correct. I walked into my mother's house and found my sister's life installed in it like she had always been there. She looked at me from the kitchen doorway and said, "I'm just making sure the house is taken care of." I looked at her. I looked at the drawings on the refrigerator. I said, "I know." What I already knew, what she did not know I knew, meant that none of it mattered. Not the moving truck, not the drawings, not whatever she was planning to say to me in the weeks ahead. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now let me take you back to 6 years ago when my mother said something I didn't understand until I was standing in her kitchen looking at someone else's drawings on her refrigerator. 6 years ago, I was 21. Still in college, driving home on weekends more than most of my friends did, because home, my mother's home, was the kind of place worth driving back to. My mother's house was a craftsman bungalow on a tree-lined street in a mid-sized city in the Pacific Northwest. She had bought it herself, 12 years before, after my father left, saved for it, chosen it, painted every room herself over 2 weekends with music on and the windows open. The living room was a deep blue-green she had picked from a paint swatch she carried in her purse for a month before deciding. She always said the color was the first thing in the house that was entirely hers. The house smelled like whatever she was baking. She baked the way some people read, for comfort and pleasure and the satisfaction of a thing done well. On weekends, it was usually something with cinnamon. The smell hit you at the front door before you were even fully inside. It was the smell of arriving. The kitchen floor was original tile, small black and white hexagons, slightly uneven, with one cracked tile near the stove that she had never replaced because she said it gave the floor character. It made a specific sound when you stepped on it, a faint click, like a small agreement. I knew that sound the way I knew her voice. She had soft hands, warm, always slightly flowery on weekend mornings. When she hugged you, she held on, and when she let go, she kept one hand on your arm for a moment afterward, the way people do when they are not quite ready to stop touching you. That fall, on a Saturday in October, we were baking together. She was teaching me her pie crust, which she claimed was a science and I claimed was luck, and we were both right. The kitchen was warm and the windows were fogged slightly, and outside the maple in the backyard was at its peak, red and gold against a gray sky. She said out of nowhere, "I want to tell you something about this house." I said, "Okay." She said, "I changed some things last spring with the attorney. I want you to know that this house is specifically yours in writing when I'm gone, not split, not shared, yours." I said, "Mom, you don't need to talk about that." She said, "I do, because your sister is going to tell you otherwise, and I want you to know before that happens what is true." I was 21. I said, "Kendra wouldn't." My mother looked at me with the particular patience of a woman who knows her children completely. She did not argue. She just said, "Remember what I'm telling you. When the time comes, you'll understand why I said it now instead of later." I nodded. I went back to the pie crust. I thought she was being overly cautious in the way that mothers sometimes are. I did not understand that she was describing something she had already seen. Kendra is 5 years older than me. She had always been the one who organized things, family events, holiday plans, the logistics of everything. She was capable and efficient, and she had a way of making her preferences sound like consensus. Growing up, I had mostly just gone along with what Kendra organized, because it was easier and because I trusted that she was acting in everyone's interest. What I had not fully understood, not yet, not at 21, was that Kendra organized things for Kendra. The appearance of fairness was one of her tools, not one of her values. She had moved to a larger city 3 years earlier with her husband, Marcus. They had 2 children and a house that was bigger than they could comfortably afford, and Kendra had a way of talking about money that suggested she thought about it more than she let on. She talked about my mother's house sometimes, its location, how the neighborhood had changed, what it would be worth now compared to what my mother had paid. My mother listened to these conversations with a stillness I had not understood at the time. At a family dinner that same October, when Kendra said something about the house being a significant asset and how important it was to think about these things practically, my mother said, "I think about it." Kendra said, "We should all sit down sometime," and my mother said, "I've handled it." Something moved across Kendra's face. Brief. Gone. She picked up her fork. I was 21 and I was across the table and I saw it, and then the conversation moved on and I let it go. My mother had not let it go. I understand that now. My mother was diagnosed 3 years later. Breast cancer, caught at a stage that meant the word treatable came with a long list of conditions attached. She handled it the way she handled everything, practically, without performance. She went to her appointments. She asked her doctors specific questions and wrote down the answers. She kept baking on weekends when she had the energy for it, and when she didn't, she sat at the kitchen table with coffee and listened to the radio, which she said was almost as good. Kendra came home more often during the treatment. She was attentive, driving our mother to appointments, staying for stretches of a week or two, managing things around the house. My mother was grateful. I was grateful. It looked like love. What I noticed, slowly over months, was that Kendra had opinions about the house that she expressed only when our mother was resting. She commented on the furniture, what was worth keeping, what should be replaced. She walked through rooms in a way that reminded me of something I couldn't name at the time, an appraisal. One afternoon, I arrived at the house earlier than expected. My mother was napping. Kendra was on the back porch on the phone. I could hear her through the kitchen window. She said Marcus's name. She said by spring and before the estate is official and the attorney mom uses is old, he won't push back. She said a number. She said she doesn't know what she's agreeing to half the time anyway. I stood at the kitchen sink with the water running so she wouldn't hear me, and I looked at the cracked tile on the floor and I breathed. I turned the water off. I dried my hands. I went to check on my mother. I did not say anything. I noted it. I filed it away. That word, estate. That is the word they use for everything that used to be love. Kendra left 2 days later. At the door, she hugged me and said, "You're doing so well. Mom is lucky to have you here." I said, "We're lucky to have each other." She smiled. She got in her car. I went back inside. I sat at the kitchen table where my mother had taught me pie crust, and I thought about what she had said 6 years ago on a Saturday in October. "Your sister is going to tell you otherwise. Remember what I'm telling you." I was invisible to Kendra. I always had been the younger one, the uncomplicated one, the one who went along. She had never needed to consider me as a variable. I decided to stay invisible, for as long as I needed to. My mother passed 8 months later. In the weeks before the end, on a Thursday afternoon when she was having a clear and gentle day, she held my hand and she said, "There's something in the blue tin, on the shelf in my bedroom closet, above the sweaters." I said, "Okay." She said, "Don't look until you need to." I said, "How will I know when I need to?" She said, "You'll know." She was right, I knew. The morning after the funeral home, after I had driven home from my mother's house and found Kendra's life installed in it, I went back in the early morning before Kendra was awake. I let myself in with my key. I went upstairs. I found the blue tin on the shelf above the sweaters. Inside, a letter, a folded document, and a business card for an attorney named Susan Park, with a handwritten note on the back in my mother's handwriting. "She has everything. Call her." I sat on the edge of my mother's bed, with her quilt, with the particular smell of her still in the fabric, and I read the letter. My mother had updated her estate documents 18 months ago. She had gone to Susan Park, not the old attorney, not the one Kendra had mentioned on the back porch, and she had made specific, documented, witnessed arrangements. The house was in a trust that transferred directly to me, not split, not shared, mine, in language that anticipated a challenge and had been built to withstand one. She had also left a note about the conversation she'd had with Kendra 2 years earlier, a conversation I had not known about, in which Kendra had suggested that our mother consider a joint arrangement for the house, framed as practical, framed as fair. My mother had listened. She had said she would think about it. Then she had gone to Susan Park. She had seen it coming years before I had. She had simply made sure it didn't land. I sat on her bed and I looked at the blue tin in my hands, and I thought about all the Saturday mornings and the cinnamon smell and the cracked tile and the way she kept one hand on your arm when she let go of a hug. She had been protecting me while she was sick, while she was tired, while she was managing her own fear and her own grief at what was coming. She had been quietly, carefully, making sure I would be okay. Have you ever had to stay silent to protect yourself, even when every part of you wanted to speak up? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. I did not call Susan Park that morning. I needed to sit with what I knew. I needed to understand the shape of everything before I moved. Over the next 3 days, the days Kendra thought she had, I listened. I heard her on the phone with Marcus twice. She said the estate proceedings, and before the attorney contacts her, and she's too emotional right now to push back. She said a date, the date of the estate reading, and she said, by then it will already look like a done deal. I went to my car. I texted Susan Park 2 words, I'm ready. She replied within the hour, your mother said you would be, come in tomorrow. And that night, Kendra made dinner in my mother's kitchen, using my mother's pans, at my mother's stove, on my mother's cracked tile floor, and she was warm and sisterly, and she talked about how we were going to get through this together. She went to sleep in my mother's house certain that the next few weeks were going to go the way she had planned. They were not. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button because this story is about to turn. Susan Park's office was small and precise, a converted Victorian near the university, with original woodwork and tall windows and the kind of order that comes from someone who thinks in systems. She was 50, perhaps, with reading glasses on a chain and a directness I recognized immediately as the quality my mother would have chosen. She said, your mother came to me 18 months ago. She was clear about what she wanted, and she was very clear about why. She set the trust documents on the desk between us. The house is yours. The contents are yours. The transfer is direct and does not go through the general estate. She said, Kendra will contest. Her attorney will argue that the trust was established under undue influence, that you had access your sister didn't, that you shaped your mother's decisions. She said, we have documentation of your mother's independent legal consultation, her capacity at the time of signing, and the fact that she specifically sought an attorney outside her existing relationships for this purpose. The contest will not succeed, but it will take some months to resolve fully. She said, in the meantime, the house is yours. Kendra's presence there is not legally sanctioned. You can ask her to leave at any time. I said, I want to do it correctly, not reactively. Susan Park said, that's exactly what your mother said you would say. She outlined the timeline. The estate reading was in 2 weeks. That was when Kendra expected to hear what she had planned for. That was when she would understand that the plan had been obsolete before she moved a single box. I went home. I sat with everything I knew. That weekend, Kendra called me. She said she wanted to talk about the house, about what made sense, about how to handle things fairly. She said she knew it was hard, but we needed to be practical. She said our mother would have wanted us to work together. She said, I just want us to do right by each other. I said, I'll think about it. She said, Rachel. I said, I'll think about it, Kendra. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, okay. My friend Tara called later that night. Tara had known my mother. She said, how are you doing, really? She said it the way only certain friends say things, leaving actual space for the actual answer. I said, I'm sad, and I'm okay, both at the same time. She said, that sounds right. After we hung up, I drove to the house. Kendra was out. I let myself in and I walked through the rooms slowly, the blue-green living room, the kitchen with the cracked tile, the hallway that smelled like her still, faintly, underneath everything else. I stood at the kitchen window and looked at the backyard and the maple tree that was just beginning to bud. I wanted to call Kendra right then. I wanted to lay everything on the table between us and watch her understand what our mother had done. But I heard her voice, the specific way she said my name when she wanted me to slow down, on a Saturday morning with pie crust on the counter and the windows fogged with warmth. Remember what I'm telling you. When the time comes, you'll understand why I said it now instead of later. She did not mean react. She meant be ready. I stood in her kitchen for a long time, and I cried not from anger, though the anger was there, underneath. I cried because she had been sick and she had been scared and she had still found the time to go to a different attorney and update her documents and leave me a blue tin on a shelf above her sweaters. She had thought about me, specifically, while she was managing her own ending. I wish this were different. I wish Kendra had been the kind of sister who would have sat with me at the funeral home instead of calling a moving company while I was choosing a casket. I wish she had let grief be grief for a little while before she made it a transaction. I wish the person I grew up with had been someone my mother didn't have to plan around. But wishes don't appear on a deed. Trusts do. And my mother's trust had been filed for 18 months. The night before the estate reading, it was 11:52 p.m. I was in my apartment. Quiet, one lamp. My mother's blue tin on the table in front of me. I had brought it home. I did not want to leave it in the house while Kendra was there. Susan Park was on a video call. Behind her, I could see a shelf of binders, organized, labeled. She looked the way I imagined my mother had looked when she sat across from her 18 months ago, focused, certain, unhurried. She said, "Everything is in order, Rachel. Tomorrow is the reading. The trust documents will be presented. Kendra's attorney has been notified of the filing." I said, "She doesn't know yet." She said, "Her attorney knows. Whether he's told her, I can't say, but tomorrow she will know." She said, "How are you feeling?" I thought about it. I said, like my mother knew what she was doing. Susan Park said, "She did. She was one of the most prepared clients I've had. She asked every question twice and she never let me rush her." I said, "That was her." She said, "Try to sleep. Tomorrow stay calm, let the documents do the work." We ended the call at 12:04 a.m. I sat in the quiet. The city outside my window was dim and still. Across town in my mother's house, Kendra was asleep in my mother's bed, certain that tomorrow the estate reading would confirm what she had already arranged her life around. 12:04 a.m. I am 27 years old. I am my mother's daughter. And across the city, Kendra was sleeping soundly, planning what she would say at the reading, already thinking about what came after. She would find out in about 9 hours. The estate reading was at 10 in the morning. A law office downtown, wood paneling, the particular hush of a room where serious things are said. Kendra arrived with Marcus and her attorney. She was dressed carefully. She had the posture of someone who has rehearsed. Susan Park was already there when I arrived. She gave me a brief, professional nod. The reading began, standard language, then the trust documents. Susan Park presented them clearly. The house. The contents, the direct transfer, my name. Kendra's attorney leaned toward her and said something low. Kendra looked at the documents. She looked at Susan Park. She looked at me. She said, "What is this?" Susan Park said, "The trust your mother established 18 months ago." Kendra said, "She never told me," Susan Park said. "She wasn't required to." The room went quiet. Marcus put his hand on Kendra's arm. She looked at the table. Something moved through her face, the calculation, the recalibration, the understanding of what had actually happened. Then she looked at me. She looked at me like I was still the younger sister who went along with things, who didn't push back, who could be managed around. I wasn't. I hadn't been for 9 months. I did not say anything. I held the blue tin in my bag. I had brought it. I don't entirely know why, maybe just to have something of hers close, and I looked at my sister across the table and I felt, more than anything, tired. Tired and sad and entirely clear. Kendra's attorney filed a contest within the month. It did not succeed. She moved her things out of the house on a Saturday in June. I was not there. I did not need to be. My mother used to say, "Remember what I'm telling you. When the time comes, you'll understand why I said it now instead of later." I always thought she meant be careful, be aware of what Kendra was capable of, protect yourself. She meant something more than that. She meant, I see what is coming and I love you enough to prepare for it before you have to. I am telling you now so that when the time comes, you are not alone in it. You will have my voice with you and you will know what to do. That is what she gave me, not just the house. The knowledge, the preparation. The blue tin on the shelf above the sweaters. Kendra and I do not speak now. That has its own grief, a quieter grief than losing my mother, but real. I don't pretend otherwise. I think about the sister she could have been. I think about it more than I expected to. Susan Park still handles my affairs. She sends a brief professional email every spring, always in April, always understated. I know what it means. As for me, I still have the house. The blue-green living room and the cracked tile and the maple in the backyard that comes back every spring. I bake on weekends now. Not as well as she did. I don't think I will ever be as good as she was, but I try, and the cinnamon smell fills the kitchen the way it always did, and when it does I stand in it for a moment before I do anything else. I think about her every time I step on the cracked tile. Every single time. And I think, she knew. She had known for years. She just made sure that when the time came, I would be standing on solid ground. She gave me that. She always gave me that. If you have ever had to protect something that belonged to you, something that someone else decided was theirs before you even knew there was a fight, I want to hear your story. Tell me in the comments. And if this story moved you, please subscribe. There are more to come.